Hello and welcome. Today we're talking about understanding a file system. So a file system is essentially how we store and organize data on a disk. A partition is a logical division of a physical storage device. So we have a hard drive. We partition it to whatever groups we want. From there, we tell the partitions how we can write data to their sections. Each partition you create in Windows 10 will have a file system associated with it. You do not have to have one file system for the entire disk unless it's one giant partition. So let's look at some examples. We have a disk. We can cut it in half. We can set one to FAT, one to NTFS. Or we can have one disk and we configure it as one giant NTFS partition. We have it set to one giant drive. There's pros and cons for doing this. Some people partition them off so that they can have data on one and games on the other, or data on one and downloads on the other, or any other preferences that they may want. The important part here is you can have one physical disk and you can partition it into separate logical disks, each one having a separate drive letter. Remember, when you select a file system, after you partition it, you select a file system. You can select FAT32 or NTFS inside Windows. You typically have a file system based on the features you want to use. If you want security attributes, you use NTFS. If you want cross-platform compatibility, you want to be able to take it to a Linux machine or an Apple, then you may want to do FAT32. Most other OSs cannot write to an NTFS, only Windows. So that becomes some cumbersome issues, which we're going to discuss those a little bit later. So another common question is, what happens if I have FAT32? Can I convert it to NTFS? And the answer is yes, you can. And again, those are just the two primary file systems for Windows. If we're talking other OSs, there's other file systems. So your file system is used to, again, track the storage of data files on your hard disk in an easier way to understand. One of the fundamental choices associated with file management is the choice of file system configuration. Again, Windows recommends for Windows 10 it's NTFS. Sorry, Microsoft recommends for Windows it's NTFS. Realistically, most versions of Windows are going to be NTFS. So let's look at a comparison. So realistically, all OSs that are done in the last 20 years will support both NTFS and FAT32. Both support long names. Both support some type of an efficient use of disk space. NTFS allows for compression. NTFS also does encryption. FAT32, when you're using FAT32 in Windows 10, actually now allows for encryption support. Before Windows 10, it did not. Basic security or local security procedures, FAT32 does not allow for this, where NTFS does. The maximum volume size. Even this FAT32 is still really subjective. It's not 32 gigs. This is what Microsoft says, but it's still fairly large. Nowhere near as large as NTFS with 16 terabyte storage or greater. FAT32, main advantage, smaller cluster sizes, so it is more efficient. Main disadvantage is FAT32 compared to NTFS doesn't support large drives, terabyte plus drives, and it doesn't provide any real robust security features. NTFS does have a ton of new features, does allow for large drives. It does offer comprehensive folder level and file level security. It is the standard for current Windows-based operating systems. So features. Disk management features. When files are read or write to the disk, they can be automatically encrypted or decrypted. You can parse points, use mount points to redirect data. There's a support for parsing files. There's remote storage options available for like external tapes and things like that, or taking an object from one NTFS to another NTFS type system. You have the ability to resize partitions, grow them, shrink them, play with them. Most importantly, it has the ability to recover logging of metadata. When you go to write a file, it writes it to a log first. If the PC restarts while you're in the process of saving that data file, well, there's a log of the changes. So there's some benefits there. So let's talk about conversion. How do you convert a FAT to an NTFS? You can do this using a convert command. So let's actually try this. Alright, so I have my Windows machine. I do not have any additional storage. I'm going to go ahead and set a new hard drive. SCSI's fine. I'm going to do 10 gigs. Alright, I'm going to go to my disk management. First thing, I have to initialize my partition. MBR is the older way of storing data. GPT is the newer way. GPT allows for the large versions of hard disks. GPT isn't understood in older versions of Windows. So, I mean, anything from 2000 newer can do either or. So I will initialize it. So it shows online, but it still shows unallocated. So let's go and let's create a new volume. Assign it a drive letter E, sure. I want to set this to FAT32. So we have a new file format. We have a new file, we have an E drive. We can copy data to it. If we look at the properties of it, it's FAT. It's FAT32. What happens if we want to make this NTFS? Going back to disk management, if you right click on it, we don't have a convert to NTFS option here. Even in the properties of the drive, we don't get a convert option. This has to be done through a command terminal. Alright, so we use the convert. We're doing E drive. E drive : /fs : NTFS. We are converting E drive. We're converting the file system to FAT32. Sorry, from FAT32 to NTFS. You'll notice it says FAT32. So let's hit enter. You'll notice it will make you do some verification. So, current volume label. And once it ran through it, it verified it. It's now showing NTFS. our data, our file that we created, is still there. So changing the file system like that, converting them, doesn't really affect anything. So that's how we would do a conversion if we needed to. Alright, so that is our file system overview in a nutshell. Questions or concerns, please feel free to reach out. Thank you.